of our health sector. Since 2017, we have built health facilities, renovated, refurbished, and given hospital equipment and consumables to facilities across the country.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
Top Story is always brought to you by Gasem Cement, the nation builder, and Vodafone. The future is exciting ready. The debate has been raging, and tonight the NDC is raising the stakes even higher on the Okada legalization controversy. Flag bearer John Mahama is making more promises, this time committing to use state resources to purchase the motorbikes for riders on hire purchase. Now, this is coming just a day after Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia declared the government position in clear, unequivocal terms in stating that the government will not legalize Okada. This was just yesterday. Today, the flag bearer of the NDC has responded, enhancing that promise even more and introducing additional elements to the original promise to simply legalize. We're going to listen to John Mahama shortly, but just a taste of what Dr. Bawumia said yesterday.
We would rather encourage the Okada riders to come in and try to buy and lease these vehicles so that they can run businesses. They need to graduate from this risky and less safe Okada riding to a safer means of transportation. Their problem will be a lack of capital. But if you bring in new leasing policies and we have our national ID cards with our digital addresses and so on, we can have a credit system working and give you an option other than this risky. You don't want to finish graduate school and then you make a life in Okada riding. You can have a better option, and we will give you a better option. So yes, we will not legalize Okada business in Ghana. It may be a tough decision, but it is in the interest of Ghanaians. We have had discussions, but we will stick to our decision.
Well, so that is the Vice President just yesterday speaking on this matter, stirred its own controversy. Why? Because just last week, Friday, we know that the Transport Ministry had issued a statement in which they had said that the government was resuming consultations on whether or not to legalize Okada, but the clarification came even before that consultation will begin. We heard yesterday what you just heard there, Vice President categorically saying that the government will not legalize it. Well, today on the Super Morning Show, Deputy Information Minister Pius Ajide was on the show and explained why the Vice President was this categorical even before the consultations resume. It's been going on since last year, but the announcement was that it's supposed to resume in October. And a report sent to Cabinet for consideration once the process is complete. But we've heard the Vice President announce already that this is not going to happen. So how does Pius Ajide explain the categorical pronouncement by the Vice President in the absence of the report from the consultations?
Colleague Honorable Abuja, I think that our position was quite clearly articulated yesterday by His Excellency the Vice President, right. And it is aptly captured in our manifesto, Leadership of Service, Protecting Our Progress, Transforming Ghana for All. And so there should not be any ambiguity about our position at all. I think that the misunderstanding may have arisen out of our attempt to expose the inconsistency on the part of our colleagues in the NDC. Right. You recall that they were the ones who passed a law banning Okada and making it illegal. And so when they did this sharp U-turn after just one election cycle, many sought to question what the basis of that passage was in the first place. Did they just act on the impulse without any deep introspection and without thinking about the implications and ramifications of that policy. And if that is their track record, how can the people of Ghana vouch for them and be assured that the policies that they are now promising, they actually have done some serious work about it? Because it's just one election cycle. So they have proven themselves to be people who do not do any serious introspection. They do not think hard and deep about policy moves before they embark upon them. And that we in the MPP, realizing the challenges that exist in the transport sector relative to even Okada operations and so on, have started work to deliberate on the way forward. And that may have been where the misunderstanding may have arisen. And we only wanted to suggest to the people of Ghana that unlike the NDC, we do deep thinking. And if I may come back and so on, we have come to a firm conclusion that the best thing to do for Ghanaian youth who are interested in the transport sector as operators, and also Ghanaian passengers who desire for themselves and their goods to be transported from one place to the other, is to go for the lower risk, higher paying vehicle transportation.
And this, as the Vice President had explained, this vehicle transportation policy that the current government is pursuing, as the Vice President explained, there will be one in which the government will facilitate the purchase of these vehicles for the motor riders, instead of encouraging them to ride on the Okada, which this current government believes is dangerous. They believe they will rather facilitate the purchase of proper vehicles for them that they can use, and they believe that is brings in more money than the Okada. It's almost like the high purchase version, but this time it is using getting a high purchase to buy a vehicle. Then today, the flag bearer of the NDC campaigning across the country, obviously, now also goes back to the Okada conversation, and then enhances the promise, not just simply legalize it, but then introduces the concept of the high purchase as well in the Okada debate. Listen to John Mahama.
Okada for yes, ya best Samrano. Send a beya Okada ebeya adia yadia tum se mutimi yes ejumano. Send a beya police for enhamubium. Na ni ebeni se moto ni bi the moto ni bi baba. Na mwaje no higher purchase. Etesa woji ana utua kakra. Na utua na kakra. Utua wi a na etesa moto na ya odia.
And this is Top Story. Joining me right now on the telephone line is the minority spokesperson on transport. Mr. Kwame Agboja has been speaking quite a lot on this particular subject. But Mr. Agboja, I'm grateful that you joined me here on Top Story once again. Hello, sir. Hello, Mr. Agboja, can you hear me? Okay, he can't seem to hear me. Hello, Mr. Agboja, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, let's try and fix the telephone line because I know he's on the telephone line. We would also give you a sense of what the campaign trail is looking like today because John Mahama isn't the only candidate campaigning today. He is campaigning today. Of course, you've heard his promise on the Okada. He was addressing a rally at Kajiji in the Senate East District of the Bono East region. We'll bring you also what the First Lady has also been doing here in the Greater Accra region, touting her achievements in the health sector shortly. Mr. Kwame Agboja, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Evan. Can you hear me?
I can hear loud and clear. Thank you very much for joining us again on Top Story. Now, I want to quote from your party's manifesto on this subject, this controversial subject of Okada. You say, legalize the use of commercial motorbikes known as Okada and tricycles and regulate the industry to make it safe for training the riders, ensuring they observe necessary safety precautions, and mandating them to provide helmets for their passengers. Nowhere in that did you say anything about how they acquire the motorbikes. Tonight, John Mahama says the state is going to buy for them and they're going to get it on high purchase. This is clearly an afterthought.
Good evening, Evans. Good evening to you. Not at all. If we were to write everything that is required in terms of a manifesto, you will have many pages of a manifesto. The manifesto basically outlined the policy direction of a party or a government on a particular issue. And the difference is very clear now that NPP doesn't want Okada, NDC want it. So now President Mahama is providing further detail in terms of how we're going to make this safe to address the issues you have raised, everybody have raised, and then how to make this available. I am aware of companies that are ready to manufacture to the best possible safety standard that may be put forward by MTTD, the DVLA, and Ghana Standards Authority. The President Mahama was basically encouraging the Okada people that apart from legalizing this, we would make it available to you. The standards that will be required in terms of equipment to be used will be made available to you. But if you have the money to buy, you can buy. If you don't have the money to buy, we can make it available to you on terms that are manageable for you. So that is basically another explanation to it. So
yeah, I mean, but that's a significant policy addition. Your initial policy was safety and legalization. It was simply would have taken you 2 words to say we'll do safety and legalize and provide the motorbikes to you on higher purchase. You could have added that simple line to it. You didn't. The point is clear that you drafted this, you thought it through. This latest addition is something that had just popped up in the heat of the campaigning because of all the controversy. This is political opportunism.
No. Look, there are people who already... Don't forget that government hasn't provided any of the motorcycles that are being used now. The riders have been able to do this by themselves. But there may be people who may not be able to afford it. And we are saying that if those people are identified, we'll help them. Look, I am aware, like I said, of industry players who are ready to set up processing plants in this country to produce bikes that have got the highest possible safety standard that will be required by law that will be made in Parliament in due course, so that the safety issues, which are real concerns of Ghanaians, will be addressed. So it's not an afterthought. It's just additional information. In fact, as the time goes on, you'll be hearing more and more clarity and explanation to some of these things. And it's just in order, because people ask questions, and you have been very good in interrogating both parties on this matter. And so this is just an additional information. It's not a transformation from what we're talking about. And definitely, NDC is not saying that we are going to buy a motorbike for everybody. After all, some people have made enough money through the business already and are able to buy their motorbikes.
I mean, so why are you going to get the money to purchase these motorbikes for the riders?
Oh, where did we get money to give millions of dollars to Pullman to build a hotel out of the Ghana Infrastructure Fund at the airport, which belongs to the president relative?
Yeah, but that doesn't answer the question. Where is the NDC going to get the money to buy?
We'll make budgetary allocation for it. We'll make budgetary, and guess what? It is not necessarily supposed to come from the how do you call it, the consolidated fund. There are high purchase companies. It's currently SIC and many other companies provide high purchase opportunities.
Yeah, but that's not what John Mahama. John Mahama says we will, and I'm assuming he's talking as somebody who has just one power and is in government as a president. When he says we, he's talking about the state.
It will be a combination of things. When we said we would expand Tema Port, the MPS port, government didn't put in one city, but we've got a $1.5 billion port. We didn't pay $1, but we've got $1.5 billion per port that will become the property of Ghana in 30 years. So there are series of methods of funding these things, and it could be private sector and government intervention. Indeed, Maslock has been providing vehicles for commercial drivers in this country. So why can't Maslock be able to do that for motor riders? We can easily do that, Evans.
Okay, so a manifesto policy intervention must address a need. You have identified a need to be, well, it creates jobs, and so let's solve it by legalizing it and make it safe. Is there a need for the people not having motorbikes? Because the Okada business has flourished, and they haven't needed government support to purchase the motorbikes. And so why is government burdening itself with the additional responsibility of purchasing the motorbikes for them on hire purchase when we haven't heard them complain about lack of access to motorbikes?
Well, that's a very good question, Evans. As a member of parliament, I can say that there are a couple of motorbikes being used in Adaklu. Currently, that came from me. And I'm sure if my colleagues, other members of parliament would be frontal, they will tell you a couple of motorbikes in their communities also come from them. The point I'm trying to make is this, that historically, private sector have been able to do this by themselves. GPRTU, majority of vehicles are on the road, trotro, taxis, are procured by the owners or investors themselves without government intervention. But at a point in time, government does intervene. And that is why I use Maslock as an example. We bought buses in 2014, 2015. We couldn't distribute them. In 2017, 2018, NDP distributed them to GPRTU and others. That is in order. There may be some people within the net who may not be able to raise the necessary funding. Those are the people President Mahama is talking about. He's not saying that compulsorily we would be able to do this. This is about having a society where even the weakest will be able to be given a head up in terms of getting the ability to do or play a role in the economy.
I'm curious though, because I remember you telling me yesterday, or the last time we spoke to you before yesterday, that part of this promise have come in because as you told the country, you put a manifesto together, you had people's needs. People told you that this is a need of theirs and they want it legalized, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay. Now, if that is the case, did you hear people say to you that it's difficult for us to access the motorbikes, as in buy them?
Yes, not only motorbikes. We've had people talking to us about how Matlock was able to give them taxis in the past, which doesn't exist anymore. They want us to continue with that. We had GPRTU Prota people telling us that. We have Okada people asking us to do that. In fact, they even go further. That is it possible for us to have a situation where government or district assemblies could intervene by, since they are going to take some taxes from them, to actually prepare a place for them, which can be a loading bay, whatever you can call it, a station, so that that will be a designated place where they will be monitored and everything. So there are a series of things, government interventions that will take place, apart from changing the law. There will be a series of things that will be done, even training schools to be able to give them the appropriate training. So there are a series of things that come together with it. It's not merely the legalization. I
asked that question because I find it curious that if your consultations, and we told that your manifesto is a people's manifesto. You said that because you claim you only drafted it because the people said that is what they wanted. If the people told you that, yes, legalize, but we also want you to help me access the motorbikes and buy them. Yes, when in crafting a manifesto, you left that second bit out, although you claim they told you.
Well, I just said to you that then in fact, we had thousands of pages of information across the 275 constituencies on various issues. If we were to basically put these things together in a form of a manifesto, we wouldn't have finished reading from the day we launched it today. So we basically break it down. Take the salient point. The policy is legalize Okada. That is the main thing. Yeah,
but the high purchase would have taken you three additional words just to add to it.
No, but then what about the one I just told you about people ready to come into the manufacturing of safer motorbikes? What about people who came to us telling us they can do better helmets? People telling us they can do better clothing for them. Insurance companies telling us they can tailor-made insurance policies to meet those standards. We couldn't continue writing all these things. Otherwise, the manifesto becomes a document which you can never finish reading.
Stay with me, Mr. Agboja, because we've just been joined by the Road Safety Commission. The head of Regulation, Inspection and Compliance, Kwame Tiahene, is on the telephone line with me. Mr. Chan, I'm grateful that you could join me here on Top Story.
Hello.
Hi. Mr. Chan, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, Ivan.
Thank you for joining me. I'm curious to hear what the Road Safety Commission makes of this debate.
Well, I think it's been a matter on the table for some time. For close to 2 years, we've been going around through the Ministry of Transport trying to tease out ideas on the way to go. But it's important to point out that before it became a matter of law in 2010, there was a whole study which informed the position of the law at the time. And out of agitations and also concerns raised by stakeholders, it became necessary for us to reflect on these other options. In fact, the team have been dispatched to Rwanda about a year ago to try to understand what persists in those countries. But as a transportation means or mode.
Forgive me, just for clarity. So your point is, and Okada became explicitly an illegal activity in 2012, correct?
Yes, I mean in the law in 2180.
True. Now your point, and just the clarity I'm trying to seek before we proceed, that particular law, it's an LI, in fact. That LI that made it explicitly legal was a product of broad consultations. And of course, John Mahama then was a president, and of course his government facilitated it. From what you're saying, they did so in 2012, John Mahama and his government, because the broad consultation said make it illegal. Is that the clarity?
What I'm saying is that, consistent with policy formulation, we looked at the data. We carried out a study. We looked at best practice, what happened in our neighboring West African sub-region. We engaged stakeholders, including members of parliament. I believe that Honorable Fritz Bafo was very involved in these consultations we had. But ultimately, we went to parliament, and it became the law, because all the evidence at the time pointed to the fact that the conditions were not suitable to make it legal at the time. And the study raised quite a number of concerns. For instance, if you look at the motorcycle, its engineering and its safety profile, I mean, it is incomparable to vehicles and other means of transportation. Beyond the helmet, it doesn't come with a seatbelt, for instance. It doesn't have airbags to limit the risk to exposure to injury. It doesn't have walls like you may find in taxis, which will protect you from harm and all of that. The helmet in itself, if you happen to use a helmet inappropriately, the consequences are very severe. So a number of safety considerations were at play, which informed the decision at the time. As I speak to you today, if you look at the number of training schools that have been licensed to train riders or drivers, the whole of Ghana, there's about 1 or 2 driving schools that have shown interest to train people in the art of driving or riding. Insurance companies have said that the risk to the use is very high, so they are unable to cover such risks. Those were the issues that informed the position in 2010 into 2012.
Okay.
And that has been the law.
Okay, but Mr. Chani, here's the question though. Since that LI was enacted, it's been 8 years. In that 8 years, this particular law has become a white elephant, a paper tiger. It has been flagrantly violated on the street. Police is not enforcing it. It's become, I don't want to use the word, an absolutely useless piece of legislation. Isn't it right then, as it's been proposed now by the NDC, to legalize it, having seen what has happened in the 8 years since this law was enacted, and then regulate it? Because your own statistics show that since you passed this act, it's done pretty little to stop it and to end the carnage caused by motorbikes. So regulate, legalize it, so you can regulate it properly. Isn't there wisdom in that?
Yeah, that's a sense of consultation. So I believe that these views are very healthy. It offers the opportunity for us to look at the issues from either side, so that ultimately we may take one position or the other. But regulating it, would that cure the enforcement issues? Assuming they were regulated now, would the police have the mandate, the skill capacity to all of a sudden begin to enforce the law which they have unable to do the last 8 years? These are critical questions that I believe we must collectively reflect upon. Will regulation deal with the enforcement issue or not? Would they add to the problem or not? Today, the numbers are about 1,000. When you regulate, potentially they will become more than 1,000. Are we in a position to keep a hold on the situation when they become regulated? If we can answer in the affirmative, why not? Because the reality also is that in some parts of this country as of 2020, if you cut out motorcycles, I mean, there's absolutely no means of transportation. So you want to ask whether in solving our public transportation needs in those areas, motorcycles should be preferable to metro mass buses or commercial buses, given the safety profile of these vehicles and what we have at play. So we need to reflect, continue to discuss, engage ourselves, look at the safety considerations, best practice as been happening in Rwanda, Nigeria, Benin, Sierra Leone, so that we can take a position that reflects our aspirations. Otherwise, private persons are always interested in profits and money and jobs. But at what extent? Do we do that at the pleasure of profits, or we do that to sacrifice the safety of the generality of our people? One way or the other, we must find a solution. So I believe that as we continue to engage, look at the options, we may come up to a solution at one point or the other.
Here's a direct question. Knowing what you know at the Road Safety Commission, you do this, compile the statistics every year. Knowing what you know, should we or should we not legalize it?
Maybe we should go back to 2010 and ask that the situations which made it unlawful in 2012, have the situation improved in 2020? If the situation or the enabling environment as were non-existent in 2012, if that have improved significantly to allow for regulation or legalization, maybe we can lean in the direction of that.
I mean, you know this terrain.
We probably have to look at the options again.
You know this terrain. You know what happened in 2010, 2012. What is happening now? What should be the approach? Legalize or not?
We need to look at the data and best practice. For instance, today, if you look at the data very closely, if you take out pedestrians, the next most vulnerable user class to traffic deaths and injuries are motorcyclists. 10 years ago, they were number 9. Today, they are number 2. The last 10 years, cycle fatalities have gone up by 400%. If you take it to 2001, they've gone up by over 1,000%, because potentially the enabling conditions are not right. If you look at even our road infrastructure elsewhere, the roads are designed to create spaces and lanes, particularly for motor riders. In this country, in Accra, we have a mix of traffic. These drivers or riders do not show any regard for traffic regulations. And it makes it a bit complex. So we need to be dispassionate. If we can regulate it in ways that Rwanda have done to the level that it will yield the sort of impact we want to have, maybe we can reflect on it. But the discipline profile of Rwanda, is it the same as the discipline profile of Ghana, such that you have the expectation that the rider in Ghana or Accra will suddenly begin to behave as the rider in Rwanda? These are socio-cultural issues that must also play into the discussion.
But I guess, do you have a verdict on that?
At the moment, the authority is an implementing agency. The Ministry of Transport has the duty responsibility to formulate policy. And I believe that is why it is going around to fashion out a position on the matter.
Okay, yeah.
Whichever position is arrived at as a key implementing agency, will fashion out ways to work with it and hope that we'll be able to deal with the consequence in one form or the other.
Okay, Mr. Abuja, just run out of this on time on this, but 30 seconds. You have what it takes to enforce.
Well, I think first of all, I thank my brother. He and the boss, Madam May, have been very helpful in crafting the new law that makes the entity an authority. And he's right. President Muhammad acknowledges the concerns of the public in terms of safety. And he's committed to addressing the safety issue as a core consideration in making this work. We can make this work for everybody and ensure that safety is at hand.
Okay, thank you very much. That is Mr. Abuja. Sir, Newsnight starts right now.